Part 1: The Seed of Want. In the village of Umwogo, poverty was not a stranger. It lived there openly, walked barefoot through dusty paths, and slept comfortably inside many homes. But even among the poor, there were levels. Some families struggled quietly with dignity. Others struggled loudly with shame. Nkechi's family belonged to the latter. Their house sat at the far end of the village, close to the bush where snakes occasionally slithered close at night. The walls were made of mud, cracked like old skin, and the zinc roof had holes that allowed rain to fall freely inside whenever the sky opened its mouth. As a child, Nkechi had mastered the art of placing buckets strategically around the room whenever it rained. While other children complained, she did it silently, her lips pressed tight, her heart burning. She hated poverty. She hated it with a passion that grew stronger each year. Her mother, Mama Ifunanya, was a market woman who sold gari and palm oil. She woke up before dawn every day, tied her wrapper tightly, balanced her basin on her head, and walked long distances to the market. By evening, she returned with tired feet, swollen eyes, and barely enough money to cook a decent meal. Her father, Pa Okri, had been a proud man once. But after illness weakened him and death swallowed what little he had, pride turned into bitterness. He died when Nkechi was 13, leaving behind nothing but unpaid loans and unanswered questions. At the funeral, creditors came openly to demand their money. That was the day something broke inside Nkechi. As she stood beside her mother, listening to men argue over money in front of her father's corpse, shame wrapped around her like fire. People whispered. Some shook their heads. This family has really suffered. She will soon become like her mother. Those words sank deep. That night, Nkechi stared at the leaking roof and made a silent vow. I will never be poor again. No matter what it cost me. A girl who dreamed too much. Nkechi grew into a strikingly beautiful young woman. Her beauty was the kind that made people pause mid-sentence. Tall, fair-skinned, with a calm face and sharp eyes, she stood out even in rags. People noticed. Old women in the village would sigh and say, "This girl is too beautiful to be here." Young men admired her from a distance, afraid to approach her seriousness. She did not laugh easily. She did not joke like other girls. Her mind was always elsewhere. In school, she was intelligent but impatient. Teachers praised her brilliance but warned her stubbornness. Nkechi, her teacher once said, life is not a race. She had smiled politely, but inside she thought, life is exactly a race. And I am tired of being behind. After secondary school, there was no money for further education. Mama Ifunanya tried, but every plan failed. One evening, as they sat eating gari and soup with no meat, Nkechi spoke. Mama, I want to go to Lagos. Her mother froze. Lagos, she repeated. What will you do there? Anything, Nkechi replied. I cannot die in this village. Mama Ifunanya looked at her daughter's determined face and felt fear. Lagos is dangerous, she said softly. Money is not everything. Nkechi looked away. To her, money was everything. The journey that changed everything. Nkechi left Umwogo at 19. The villagers gathered to wish her well, some genuinely, others with hidden jealousy. Mama Ifunanya cried quietly as she tied a small bag of clothes for her daughter. Remember God, she whispered. Remember yourself. Nkechi nodded, though her heart was already far away. The bus journey to Lagos was long and uncomfortable. But with every mile, Nkechi felt lighter, as if she were shedding her old skin. When she arrived, reality greeted her without mercy. She stayed with her cousin Amoka in a crowded one-room apartment in Ajigono. 10 people shared the compound toilet. Noise never slept. Hunger was common. Lagos did not care about beauty or dreams. It cared about survival. Nkechi searched for work tirelessly. She sold sachet water, worked briefly as a shop assistant, and later found a job as a waitress in a small bar. The pay was poor. Customers were rude. Men touched her inappropriately. Every night, she cried quietly. But she refused to go back. I didn't come this far to fail, she told herself. Temptation wears a smile. One evening, everything changed. A well-dressed man walked into the bar, surrounded by an aura of authority. His shoes were polished, his wristwatch expensive. People treated him with respect. His name was Chief Matthew Odelai. From the moment his eyes rested on Nkechi, something shifted. You, he said, pointing. Come. Nkechi approached nervously. What is your name? Nkechi, sir. He smiled. You should not be walking here. Those words echoed in her mind all night. Chief Odelai began visiting often. Each time, he tipped generously. He asked questions. He listened. One night, as he dropped her off, he handed her an envelope. Inside was more money than she earned in a month. For your stress, he said calmly. Nkechi hesitated. Then she took it. That was the first time greed whispered clearly in her ear. Take it. This is your way out. The first step downward. Within weeks, Nkechi's life changed rapidly. Chief Odelai paid her rent. Bought her clothes. Gave her a phone she could never afford. She moved out of Ajigono quietly. When Amoka confronted her, Nkechi dismissed her concerns. Don't act like you don't know how Lagos works, she snapped. Amoka shook her head. Easy money always has a price. Nkechi laughed. I have paid enough already, with poverty. But deep inside, a small voice trembled. Chief Odelai was married. She knew. She ignored it. Each time doubt crept in, she silenced it with luxury. I deserve this, she told herself. And greed smiled, knowing it had found a willing home. Part 2, The Sweetness of Easy Money. Nkechi adjusted the dark sunglasses on her face as she stepped out of Chief Odelai's car. The building before her was tall, painted cream and gold, with security men standing alert at the gate. This was not the kind of place girls like her used to enter. Yet here she was. Welcome home, Chief Odelai said casually. Those two words sent a thrill through her body. The apartment was fully furnished, air conditioners humming softly, leather chairs that smelled new, a television larger than anything she had ever seen. Nkechi walked slowly from room to room, touching things as if they might disappear. This is too much, she murmured. Chief Odelai smiled knowingly. You deserve comfort. That night, as Nkechi lay on the soft bed, she stared at the ceiling and smiled. For the first time in her life, hunger was far away. No leaking roof. No pitying looks. No shame. But comfort has a way of changing people. A new Nkechi is born. Within months, Nkechi transformed completely. She learned how to dress like a woman of class, soft makeup, designer perfumes, quiet confidence. She no longer rushed when she walked. She spoke slowly. She laughed less. People treated her differently now. At restaurants, waiters bowed slightly. At malls, salesgirls smiled too eagerly. In public places, men stared openly. She began to enjoy the attention. When she returned to Umuogu for Christmas, the village almost did not recognize her. Children followed her car, shouting. Women whispered. Men stared in awe. Mama Ifeanyi wept when she saw her daughter. God has done it, she said. Nkechi smiled and distributed money freely. She paid debts. Bought bags of rice. Sponsored church programs. The village praised her. And greed grew stronger. The demand for more. Chief Odelai was generous, but he was also cautious. You must not embarrass me, he warned her one evening. People talk. Nkechi nodded obediently, but inside, resentment brewed. She hated being hidden. Why should she be a secret? Why can't you divorce your wife and marry me? She asked boldly one night. Chief Odelai laughed, thinking she was joking. When he saw her serious face, his smile faded. Nkechi, he said firmly, do not cross that line. That was the first crack. She began to see other wealthy men, business partners, friends of friends. It started innocently. Dinners. Conversations. Networking. Then it became something else. Money doubled. Gifts increased. Influence spread. Nkechi convinced herself it was smart living. But each step took her further from who she once was. Amoka's warning. Amoka visited Nkechi one afternoon, her eyes scanning the expensive apartment. So this is how you live now, she said quietly. Nkechi smiled proudly. Hard work pays. Amoka looked at her cousin carefully. Is this really hard work? The room went silent. Be careful, Amoka continued. Money gotten wrongly never lasts. Nkechi stood up abruptly. If you came here to preach, you can leave. Amoka sighed. I came because I love you. Nkechi turned away. That was the last time Amoka came willingly. Enter Madame Rose. Madame Rose entered Nkechi's life like destiny disguised as opportunity. She owned an upscale spa on the island, frequented by rich women and politicians' wives. She spoke softly, dressed elegantly, and listened more than she talked. You have grace, Madame Rose told Nkechi one afternoon during a facial session. Some people are born to rise. Nkechi smiled, flattered. But grace must be secured, Madame Rose added calmly. Those words lingered. Over time, Madame Rose introduced Nkechi to powerful circles, women who controlled men, deals, and outcomes. One evening, after a private meeting, Madame Rose spoke carefully. There are forces that help people rise faster, she said. But they demand discipline. Nkechi felt a chill. What kind of forces? Madame Rose smiled faintly. The kind that rewards loyalty and punishes greed. Nkechi did not laugh. She listened. The choice. The ritual was done at night. No chanting. No blood. Just silence, candles, and vows Nkechi barely understood. You will prosper, Madame Rose said. But never betray the rules. Nkechi nodded eagerly. She wanted everything. That night, she slept peacefully. The next morning, money began to flow like never before. Deals succeeded effortlessly. Men trusted her blindly. Opportunities chased her. Nkechi believed she had finally beaten life. She did not notice that peace had quietly left her soul. Shadows in the night. The dreams began slowly. She saw herself walking endlessly, chased by shadows that called her name. She woke up sweating, heart racing. During the day, she ignored it. But at night, the voices grew louder. You asked for more. She began drinking to sleep. Chief Odelai noticed the change. You look troubled, he said one evening. I'm fine, she snapped. He studied her carefully. Nkechi, he said softly, be careful. Some roads do not allow turning back. She rolled her eyes. The man who once saved her now felt like an obstacle. The beginning of the end. Chief Odelai fell sick suddenly. Strong 1 week. Weak the next. Doctors were confused. Tests showed nothing. On his hospital bed, he held Nkechi's hand tightly. Whatever you are involved in, he whispered, leave it. Fear flashed through her heart. 2 days later, he died. At the funeral, his wife, Mrs. Eunice Odelai, stood before Nkechi and stared at her with burning eyes. You will never know peace, she said quietly. Greed will destroy you. That curse followed Nkechi everywhere. And for the first time, she was afraid. Part 3. When greed begins to collect. After Chief Odelai's burial, Lagos did not slow down for Nkechi. The city never mourned anyone for long. Traffic still roared. Deals still moved. Money still changed hands. But inside Nkechi, something had shifted. The confidence that once wrapped her like silk now felt heavy, like borrowed clothes that no longer fit. She stood alone on her balcony one night, staring at the city lights. For the first time since she arrived in Lagos, the view did not excite her. Chief Odelai was gone. And with him, a layer of protection she had never acknowledged until it vanished. The first loss. The first sign came quietly. One of her business deals collapsed overnight. A man who had promised her millions stopped answering her calls. Another partner disappeared completely. At least it's just one setback, she told herself. But setbacks multiplied. Money that used to arrive easily now delayed. Contracts were cancelled. Meetings ended in vague promises. Madame Rose was suddenly unreachable. Each time Nkechi dialed her number, it rang endlessly. Fear crept in slowly, like water seeping through cracks. The dream that spoke. The dreams became clearer. One night, Nkechi found herself standing in a large, empty hall. Candles lined the floor. At the center stood Madame Rose, dressed in black. "You have broken the rules," Madame Rose said. "I don't understand," Nkechi replied, trembling. "You wanted everything," the woman continued. "But you forgot the cost." Suddenly, the candles went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Nkechi woke up screaming. She could no longer deny it. Something was wrong. The return of Amoka. Amoka showed up unexpectedly one afternoon. She looked thinner, wiser, calmer. "I heard about Chief Odelai," she said softly. Nkechi said nothing. Amoka sat beside her. "I warned you." Tears filled Nkechi's eyes. "I don't know what is happening to me," she confessed. "Everything is falling apart." Amoka held her hand. "Come back home. Lagos has taken enough." Nkechi shook her head violently. "No. I can still fix this." Amoka sighed. "Greed does not allow fixing. It only allows collecting." Madame Rose reappears. Madame Rose finally called. Her voice was calm, cold. "You are panicking," she said. "Why didn't you tell me the rules?" Nkechi demanded. "You didn't ask," Madame Rose replied. "You wanted results, not details." "What do I do now?" Nkechi whispered. There was a pause. "You must give something precious," Madame Rose said carefully. Nkechi's heart dropped. "What kind of thing?" Another pause. "You will know." The line went dead. That night, Nkechi did not sleep. The price revealed. Days later, Mama Ifunanya fell ill. Suddenly. Severely. Doctors diagnosed a strange condition. Treatment was expensive and ineffective. As Nkechi sat by her mother's hospital bed, the truth crashed into her like thunder. "No," she whispered. "Not my mother." Mama Ifunanya held her hand weakly. "My daughter," she murmured, "money is not life." Nkechi broke down. She ran out of the hospital and screamed into the night. "This is not what I agreed to." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Everything has a price." The final straw. Desperate, Nkechi went to church. She knelt and cried openly. "God, please help me," she prayed. But even in church, peace avoided her. That same week, police officers stormed her apartment. Fraud. Money laundering. Fake companies. Evidence was everywhere. Nkechi collapsed. In the cell, stripped of jewelry and pride, she sat alone. Greed had finished collecting. Part 4, stripped of everything. The prison gate closed behind Nkechi with a heavy metallic sound that echoed in her bones. For a moment, she stood frozen, her designer clothes now replaced with a faded uniform that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Around her, women moved with dull eyes and hardened faces. Some laughed loudly. Some argued. Some stared into nothing. This was not Lagos as she knew it. This was reality, raw, unforgiving, and final. Nkechi felt naked without her phone, her money, her name. Here, she was just inmate 447. The shame of public fall. News of Nkechi's arrest spread quickly. Blogs carried her picture with cruel headlines. People who once praised her now mocked her openly. Another runs girl exposed. She thought money was everything. In Umuagu, Mama Ifunanya cried bitterly. The same villagers who once celebrated Nkechi's success now whispered with judgment. See where greed has landed her. Mama Ifunanya refused to lift her head in public. Yet, despite her illness, she gathered strength and visited her daughter. When Nkechi saw her mother behind the glass, thin and tired, she broke completely. Mama, forgive me, she sobbed. I wanted to save us. Mama Ifunanya shook her head gently. You wanted to save yourself, she said. And you forgot your soul. Those words pierced deeper than prison bars. The night of reckoning. Prison nights were the hardest. Darkness brought memories, regrets, and voices. The shadows returned. You asked for more. One night, Nkechi screamed uncontrollably, collapsing on the floor. Other inmates rushed to her side. A middle-aged woman named Sister Halima, imprisoned for years, held her tightly. Let it out, she whispered. Fighting truth only makes it louder. That night, Nkechi confessed everything, her hunger, her choices, her greed. Sister Halima listened without judgment. When you finish paying for your mistakes, she said, you must also forgive yourself. It was the first kindness Nkechi had felt in a long time. The letter. Weeks later, Nkechi received a letter. It was from Madame Rose. Short. Cold. You broke the covenant by seeking more than you were given. The protection has been withdrawn. Face your fate. Nkechi tore the letter apart, shaking. For the first time, she understood the depth of her error. Greed had not only ruined her life, it had trapped her soul. The long road inside. Prison stripped Nkechi of illusions. There was no makeup to hide behind. No money to bribe fate. No men to rescue her. Only time. Slowly, painfully, she began to change. She joined literacy programs, helped sick inmates, listened instead of talked. She prayed, not for money or freedom, but for peace. Months turned into years. Her arrogance faded. Her anger softened. Her heart humbled. When news came that Mama Ifunanya's health had stabilized, Nkechi fell to her knees in gratitude. For the first time, greed loosened its grip. The day of release. After 3 years, Nkechi was released on parole. No crowd waited. No car honked. Just Amoka. They hugged silently. You can still rebuild, Amoka said. Nkechi nodded, tears in her eyes. I will do it the right way. Part 5, Returning with Empty Hands. The road back to Umuagu felt longer than the journey to prison. Nkechi sat quietly in the bus, staring out the window as familiar landscapes passed by, red soil, palm trees, roadside markets. Everything looked the same, yet she felt like a stranger returning to a place that no longer belonged to her. When the bus finally stopped, there was no celebration. No curious crowd. No whispers of admiration. Only silence. She stepped down with a small bag in her hand and shame in her heart. A mother's embrace. Mama Ifunanya was sitting outside the house when Nkechi arrived. She had aged visibly, her back slightly bent, her hair grayer, but her eyes still carried warmth. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Mama Ifeanyi stood up and opened her arms. Nkechi collapsed into them, crying like a child. "I failed you," she sobbed. Mama Ifeanyi stroked her hair gently. "You failed yourself," she said softly. "But you are alive. That is enough to start again." That night, Nkechi slept on a thin mattress under the same leaking roof she once despised. For the first time, she was grateful for it. The village never forgets. The next morning, Nkechi stepped outside and felt the weight of eyes on her. Women whispered. Men shook their heads. Children stared openly. Is that not the girl that went to Lagos and spoiled? She came back with nothing. Every word cut. But Nkechi endured it silently. She began helping her mother in the market, carrying loads, selling gari, greeting customers humbly. Her hands blistered. Her back ached. Yet each honest sweat washed away a little of her guilt. The struggle to stay humble. Temptation did not disappear just because Nkechi had suffered. Old contacts called her. "We can help you bounce back," one said. "Just one deal," another promised. Each call stirred memories of luxury. But Nkechi remembered the cell. The nightmares. The pain. She switched off her phone. "I choose peace," she whispered. The test of character. One afternoon, a rich businessman passed through the village and noticed Nkechi. "You look familiar," he said. "Come to the city. I can help you." Years ago, she would have followed without hesitation. This time, she bowed politely. "Thank you, sir," she said. "But I am rebuilding here." The man laughed and drove off. Greed knocked. But humility answered. A new path. With time, Nkechi started a small provisions shop using borrowed money. She struggled, but she was honest. People slowly began to trust her again. Not because of money, but because of consistency. At church, she shared her testimony openly. "I lost myself chasing wealth," she said. "Greed promised me everything and gave me nothing." Some cried. Some nodded. Some listened silently. Her story became a warning. The final lesson. Years passed. Nkechi grew calmer, wiser, content. She never became rich again, but she became whole. One evening, she sat outside with Mama Ifeanyi, watching the sunset. "Are you happy?" her mother asked. Nkechi smiled. For the first time, she said yes. She had learned what greed never wanted her to know. Enough is wealth.